Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know one fact about your city or town that only local would know. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Herbert Gregory's polished Oxford shoes clicked against the marble floor of Maxwell Industries' executive wing, his reflection crisp in the spotless surface beneath. At 45, he cut an imposing figure, 6'2", shoulders straight from his college rowing days, and a jawline that hadn't softened despite his corporate success. The morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows caught the silver threading through his dark hair, adding gravitas to his appearance rather than age. "Good morning, Mr. Gregory," called out junior executives as he passed, their eager smiles masking calculation. He nodded, maintaining the perfect balance of accessibility and authority he'd cultivated over his 15-year rise through the ranks. As senior executive vice president overseeing a $2 billion division, he'd learned that perception was currency in these halls. His secretary Candace Matthews stood as he approached his office, her blonde hair pulled back in its usual severe bun. "Your 9 a.m. was pushed to 10, sir." Mr. Delgado requested the change. Something flickered behind her eyes. Concern? Fear? Before she smoothed her expression. "James needs to learn that reorganizing my schedule doesn't make him more important," Herbert remarked, noting how Candace flinched at the mention of the vice president's name. "Any other changes I should know about?" Mrs. Gregory called. "She'll be attending the Maxwell Foundation dinner tonight after all. She said she made some promising connections at last week's charity auction." Herbert paused at his office door. Christina had originally begged off tonight's event, claiming a migraine. Did she now? Interesting. He caught Candace's reflection in the glass, saw her hands trembling slightly as she arranged papers on her desk. "Thank you, Candace. Hold my calls until the Delgado meeting." Inside his office, Herbert settled behind his mahogany desk, the Manhattan skyline spread before him like a kingdom. His recent promotions had come surprisingly easily, too easily, perhaps. The thought nagged at him as he reviewed quarterly projections, his mind drifting to Christina's sudden interest in corporate networking. A knock interrupted his musings. Philip Summers, Maxwell Industries owner and Herbert's mentor, filled the doorway with his commanding presence. At 70, the billionaire industrialist moved with the energy of a man half his age. "Got a minute, Herbert?" Philip's steel-gray eyes swept the office. "Walk with me." They rode the private elevator to the rooftop garden, Philip's preferred location for sensitive conversations. The autumn wind whipped at their suit jackets as they strolled past meticulously maintained topiaries. "Your division's numbers are impressive," Philip began, "but something feels off. James Delgado's been making noise about irregularities in contract negotiations." Herbert's spine stiffened. "James has been difficult since my last promotion." Difficult is one word for it. Philip stopped, turning to face his proc. "I've been watching him." "And your wife, Christina?" Herbert kept his voice neutral, though his pulse quickened. "She's become quite the social butterfly at company events. Very friendly with certain executives." Philip's expression hardened. "I'm conducting a quiet investigation. Trust no one until it's complete. Not even those closest to you." The warning hung in the crisp autumn air. Herbert nodded, pieces clicking into place. Candace's strange behavior, Christina's newfound networking enthusiasm, James's barely concealed smugness during meetings. "Thank you for the heads up," Herbert said carefully. "I assume you'll let me know what you find?" "You'll be the first to know." Philip clapped him on the shoulder. "Your CEO material, Herbert. Don't let anyone compromise that." Back in his office, Herbert observed the daily drama of corporate life with new eyes. He watched James Delgado swagger past his door, caught the predatory gleam in the vice president's dark eyes. James was handsome in a conventional way, tall, dark, gym-sculpted physique obvious even in bespoke suits. The kind of man who peaked in college and never got over it. "Mr. Gregory?" Candace appeared in his doorway. "Your son's school called. Lucas won his debate competition." "Excellent." Herbert allowed himself a moment of genuine pride. At 14, Lucas showed promise of surpassing both his parents intellectually. And Amy, still maintaining her 4.0 GPA, According to Mrs. Gregory's update this morning, Candace shifted uncomfortably. Sir, about tonight's meeting with the Asian investors. What about it? The conference room's being renovated. Unexpectedly. Perhaps you should reschedule? Herbert studied his secretary's face. 10 years of loyal service, and suddenly she couldn't meet his eyes. No need. We'll use my office. But sir, my office will be fine, Candace. His tone left no room for argument. She retreated, defeat evident in her shoulders. The day unfolded like a chess match. Herbert noticed Christina's perfume lingering in the executive washroom hours after her supposed lunch meeting with potential donors. He observed James adjusting his tie with unusual satisfaction after emerging from the same area. Small details, easily dismissed individually, formed a damning pattern. During the afternoon board meeting, Herbert watched Christina and James through hooded eyes. His wife of 18 years sat 3 seats down, her auburn hair catching the light as she leaned forward to make a point about community engagement. At 42, she still turned heads, something she'd been leveraging more frequently at corporate events. James reached for the water pitcher at the same moment as Christina. Their fingers brushed, lingered. A smile passed between them, intimate and knowing. Herbert's mouth tightened imperceptibly. The Williams contract, Herbert interrupted their moment, seems to have been processed unusually quickly. James, perhaps you could explain the expedited timeline? James's smile faltered slightly. Just good networking, Herbert. You know how it is. Right connections, right time. Indeed. Herbert let the word hang there, heavy with unspoken meaning. After the meeting, Christina touched his arm. Darling, I'll meet you at the foundation dinner. James mentioned some concerns about the Asian market that I'd like to discuss first. Of course. Herbert kissed her cheek, catching the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne. Don't be too late. You know how Philip values punctuality. He worked later than usual that Thursday, reviewing files with methodical precision. At 8:45 p.m., Candace burst into his office without knocking. Sir, you can't, the cleaning crew needs access. And the ventilation system. Herbert rose slowly. Move aside, Candace. Please, Mr. Gregory. Just go home. Please. He caught the desperation in her voice, the genuine fear. Not for him, he realized. For herself. Consider this your only chance at redemption, he said quietly. What you do in the next minute determines your future at this company. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped aside. Herbert strode past her, following the sound of muffled laughter to his private office. He paused at the door, hand on the handle, gathering his considerable self-control. The scene inside confirmed every suspicion. Christina straddled James in Herbert's executive chair, her designer dress hiked up indecently. Files lay scattered across the desk, sensitive documents that had no business being exposed. Well, Herbert's voice cut through their startled gasps. This explains the irregular contract processing. James recovered first, his face twisting into a sneer. Your wife's been earning your promotions for years, Gregory. Better keep quiet if you want to keep this cushy job. Who'd believe you over 2 witnesses anyway? Christina's laugh held years of hidden contempt. The kid's private school? All thanks to my extra hours. You're such a loser. James is twice the man you'll ever be. Herbert's smile, cold, confident, predatory, stopped their gloating cold. He reached past them to his desk, pressing a single button with deliberate precision. Too late, he said softly. The company owner just saw everything. Now whose job is at risk? The blood drained from James's face as he realized the boardroom's live stream had been activated. Christina scrambled off his lap, stumbling in her haste. Herbert, baby, we can explain, she began. Save it for the lawyers, Christina. Herbert straightened his tie, his composure magnificent in its totality. I believe you'll find your access cards have already been deactivated. Security will escort you out. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Herbert noted with satisfaction that Philip had chosen his largest personnel for the task. Mr. Delgado, Mrs. Gregory, one guard announced, please come with us. James stood, attempting to salvage some dignity. This isn't over, Herbert. Oh, but it is. Herbert settled into his chair. after wiping it thoroughly with his pocket square. You see, Philip Summers doesn't appreciate people manipulating his company. Or his chosen successor. Christina froze halfway to the door. Successor? Did James not mention that part? Philip's been grooming me for CEO. Not that you'll be around to enjoy the perks. Herbert turned to his computer, dismissing them. Candace, please come in here. We have some paperwork to process. The secretary slipped past the disgraced couple, clutching a folder to her chest. In the doorway, Christina turned back one last time. The children, she started, will learn a valuable lesson about integrity. Herbert cut her off. Goodbye, Christina. Do remember to return your company car. The one you used to drive to your networking meetings. The security guards led them away, their footsteps fading down the marble hallway. Herbert watched their reflection disappear in the window, Manhattan's lights twinkling behind him like witnesses to his triumph. Sir? Candace's voice quavered. I'm so sorry. They blackmailed me. James threatened my job, my reputation. I know. Herbert's tone softened slightly. That's why you're still here. But Candace? Never lie to me again. She nodded frantically. Never, Mr. Gregory. I swear. Good. Now, let's begin the termination paperwork. I believe we have quite a bit of cleaning up to do. As Candace pulled up the necessary forms, Herbert's phone buzzed with a message from Philip. Well handled. Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Bring a list of James's contracts for review. Herbert allowed himself a small smile as he typed his response. The game wasn't over. It was merely entering a new phase. And Herbert Gregory had always been very, very good at games. Outside his office, Manhattan's corporate warriors continued their endless dance of ambition and betrayal. But tonight, a new player had emerged victorious. Not through manipulation or deceit, but through patience, intelligence, and the perfect poker face. The night janitor, passing by with his cart, heard something unusual from the corner office. Laughter. Low, controlled, and just a touch triumphant. Dawn hadn't yet broken over Manhattan when Philip Summers convened the emergency board meeting. Herbert sat at his right hand, expression carved from granite as security footage played on the boardroom's massive screen. The night cleaning crew had barely finished wiping down the executive floor, yet Maxwell Industries' highest echelons were already assembling for what would become known as the Thursday Morning Massacre. I apologize for the early hour, Philip addressed the bleary-eyed board members. But this couldn't wait. He nodded to his head of security, who distributed thick folders marked confidential to each attendee. The footage showed James and Christina in various compromising positions throughout the building over months. More damning were the recorded conversations about contract manipulation, kickbacks, and their planned embezzlement scheme. Jesus Christ, muttered the CFO, flipping through financial records. They've been cooking the books for years. James's corporate allies shifted uncomfortably in their seats, distancing themselves physically and metaphorically from the empty chair where their ringleader usually sat. Herbert noticed several of them wouldn't meet his eyes. This stops now. Philip's voice cut through the murmurs. Mr. Delgado and Mrs. Gregory have been escorted from the premises. Their electronic access is revoked. Their offices are being swept for evidence as we speak. One board member, Thomas Chun, raised his hand. What about Herbert's promotions? If they were influenced, already reviewed, Philip gestured to the financial analyst standing by. Ms. Rodriguez, please share your findings. The analyst stepped forward, professional and precise. Mr. Gregory's performance metrics consistently exceeded expectations. The data shows he would have earned each promotion regardless of any external influence. In fact, evidence suggests attempts were made to delay his advancement to protect Mr. Delgado's position. Herbert maintained his composure, but satisfaction coursed through him. Years of late nights, strategic planning, and relentless dedication had built his success. Christina and James's pathetic scheme had only made his path more difficult. Given these findings, Philip continued, and the obvious leadership vacuum this creates, I'm naming Herbert Gregory CEO of Maxwell Industries, effective immediately. The announcement sparked a mix of reactions, genuine congratulations from some, forced smiles from others. Herbert accepted each with equal grace. already marking who would need watching in the coming months. After the meeting, Philip held Herbert back. There's more. My investigation uncovered something personal you should see. In Philip's private office, they reviewed additional footage. Christina, lounging in James's lap in his office after hours, laughing as they discussed their plans. Poor Herbert, she cooed, running her fingers through James's hair. So focused on his precious metrics. He actually thinks he earned those promotions. James nuzzled her neck. We'll let him keep believing that. Until we're ready to take everything. The kids' trust funds? All part of the plan, baby. We'll drain them dry. Blame Daddy's mismanagement. They'll hate him forever. Herbert's knuckles whitened on his armrest, but his voice remained steady. How long have you been collecting this? 6 months, Philip replied. Started when I noticed irregularities in James's division. Christina was an unexpected bonus. I'm sorry, Herbert. Don't be. You've given me everything I need. Meanwhile, across town, Christina swept into her favorite salon, ready to spin the story her way. She'd barely settled into her chair when her phone exploded with notifications. Her country club membership, suspended. Credit cards, frozen. Social media, flooded with screenshots from the security footage. Mrs. Gregory? The salon owner approached nervously. I'm sorry, but we can't accept your usual house charge anymore. Christina's face flushed as other patrons stared. I'll use my credit card. They're all declining. She fled the salon, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. Her phone rang. James. Baby, don't panic, he started. Don't panic? Everything's frozen. What's happening? Minor setback. My lawyers are working on it. Meet me at Mr. Delgado? A new voice interrupted. This is Detective Morrison, NYPD Financial Crimes. Please hold while we execute our search warrant. The line went dead. Christina stood on the sidewalk, her world imploding in real time. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Herbert. The children have seen everything. Your video messages to James were particularly enlightening. Don't bother coming home. At their private school, Amy and Lucas sat in the headmaster's office, watching their mother's true nature revealed on a laptop screen. Dr. Harrison, the headmaster, looked more disappointed than shocked. Your father has arranged for you to stay in school, she assured them. The board of trustees was quite impressed with his handling of the situation. Lucas, his father's analytical mind evident, asked the practical questions. Are trust funds safe? Dr. Harrison confirmed. They're tied to your father's legitimate earnings. Your mother never had access. Amy wiped tears from her eyes, but her voice was steel. Good. I don't want anything from her. Across the city, James's carefully constructed world crumbled. His corporate allies evaporated. Years of mutual back-scratching forgotten in the face of potential criminal charges. His attempt to access offshore accounts failed. Philip's team had already frozen them. Your previous employers send their regards, Herbert informed him via conference call. They're very interested in reviewing your tenure with them. Especially Norton Corporation, remember them? James's face went ashen. The Norton Corp scandal had been buried years ago, or so he'd thought. You can't prove anything, he blustered. Check your email, James. Your old assistant there was very helpful. Apparently, you had a similar arrangement with the CEO's wife. In the background, James heard Christina screaming as she discovered his other networking partnerships. Her threats of revenge brought a rare smile to Herbert's face. Candace, meanwhile, sat trembling in a conference room with corporate security. They blackmailed me, she explained, handing over printed emails. James threatened to expose my brother's addiction issues. Said he'd make sure he never got treatment. The head of security reviewed the evidence. These timestamps match our investigation timeline. Why come forward now? Because Mr. Gregory showed mercy when he could have destroyed me. I won't waste that chance. Herbert's new CEO office buzzed with activity. Teams of auditors combed through records, security experts swept for additional surveillance devices, and lawyers prepared documents for multiple cases. Sir? His new secretary, thoroughly vetted, appeared at the door. Your children are here. Amy and Lucas entered, both looking older than their years. Herbert stood, uncertain for the first time that day. Lucas spoke first. Dad, we saw the videos. All of them. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't be... Amy interrupted. We needed to know the truth. About Mom, about everything. Herbert studied their faces, his daughter's quiet strength, his son's analytical gaze. What do you need from me? Just you, Dad. Lucas stepped forward. The real you. No more pretending everything's perfect. Amy joined her brother. And maybe some self-defense classes. The other kids at school are getting weird. Herbert laughed, genuine warmth breaking through his corporate armor. Done. Anything else? Pizza? They asked in unison. Pizza, he agreed. But first, I need to finish something. After they left, Herbert reviewed the final piece of evidence Philip had provided, footage of Christina coaching James on how to manipulate corporate contracts. Send it to the SEC, he instructed his legal team. All of it. As evening settled over Manhattan, Herbert stood at his office window. Below, protesters gathered, shareholders demanding blood, reporters seeking stories, and among them, he spotted Christina trying to get past security. His phone buzzed. Another desperate message from James, offering to explain everything. Herbert deleted it without reading further. His new office, 10 floors above his old one, offered a perfect view of his domain. Not bad for a loser. Mr. Gregory? His secretary's voice came through the intercom. The FBI is here for their appointment. Herbert straightened his tie, a predator's smile playing at his lips. Send them in. And Sarah? Order dinner. This might take a while. The sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of victory. In his reflection, Herbert saw what Christina and James never had. A man who'd built his success on steel and strategy, not seduction and schemes. Their betrayal hadn't weakened him. It had simply revealed his true strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, restructuring divisions, reassuring investors, rebuilding trust. But tonight, Herbert Gregory would savor the sweetest success of all, the complete and utter destruction of those who'd underestimated him. In the lobby, Christina made one last attempt to reach him. Please, I can explain everything. Security guided her out as Herbert's response came via text. Save it for your deposition. The media dubbed it the Maxwell meltdown, but Herbert preferred Philip's term. Corporate Darwinism. In the end, it wasn't the strongest who survived, but the most honest. Who knew integrity could be such a powerful weapon? As the city lights blinked on, Herbert reviewed tomorrow's agenda. Board restructuring, SEC meetings, family dinner with the kids. A full day, but he wouldn't have it any other way. After all, empires weren't built by taking days off. His phone buzzed one final time. Philip. Well done, son. Ready for day 2? Herbert's reply was simple. Born ready. Let them call it a scandal. He called it justice. And justice, served cold in a corner office with a view, tasted absolutely perfect. The Securities and Exchange Commission has launched a formal investigation into Maxwell Industries. The CNBC anchor's voice filled Herbert Gregory's office as he reviewed the latest forensic accounting reports. His signature appeared decisive and sharp on each document, authorizing full cooperation with federal authorities. Turn it up, he instructed his assistant as the story continued. Sources confirmed that former Vice President James Delgado's alleged fraud extends beyond Maxwell Industries. Multiple companies report similar schemes dating back nearly 2 decades. Herbert's phone buzzed, a text from the SEC's lead investigator. You were right about Norton Corporation. The pattern matches exactly. The investigation had taken on a life of its own. What began as an internal corporate matter had exploded into one of Wall Street's most shocking scandals. Herbert's methodical exposure of James's past had revealed a pattern so extensive it triggered investigations at 5 major corporations. Special Agent Sarah Martinez strode into his office, tablet in hand. Mr. Gregory, we've mapped Mr. Delgado's complete network. Your wife's involvement proved crucial. She kept detailed records. Of course she did, Herbert replied, unsurprised. Christina never could resist insurance policies. The agent swiped through documents on her tablet. She recorded everything. Every deal. Every encounter. But here's where it gets interesting. She also recorded other executives' wives involved in similar arrangements. The private school mothers, Herbert concluded. The agent nodded. Your wife's social climbing had an unexpected benefit. She collected dirt on everyone she met. Apparently, James's scheme was larger than even he knew. She was building her own leverage. A knock interrupted them. Philip Summers entered, looking grimmer than usual. James is making a run for it. Private jet filed a flight plan to Venezuela. Herbert's smile was cold. Let him try. Across town, James Delgado hurried across the private airfield, carry-on clutched tight. The sleek Gulfstream waited, engines humming. He'd liquidated what accounts he could still access, enough for a comfortable life somewhere without extradition. Welcome aboard, Mr. Delgado. The pilot greeted him. Weather looks clear to Caracas. James settled into the leather seat, accepting a glass of champagne. Take off as soon as possible. The jet taxied, lifted off, and landed 2 hours later at JFK International, surrounded by federal agents. The pilot, James demanded as they led him away in handcuffs, has been on Mr. Summers' payroll longer than you have, an agent informed him cheerfully. Nice try, though. Christina's downfall proved equally spectacular. Her attempt to leverage her recordings of other school mothers backfired catastrophically. Instead of buying silence, it bought her complete social excommunication. Did you really think we wouldn't compare notes? Miranda Chen, the board chairman's wife, confronted her at her last school fundraiser appearance. We've all received your little blackmail hints. Well, guess what? We chose honesty. Christina looked around the room, seeing only hostile faces. These women, once her social circle, now formed a wall of contempt. Our husbands have all disclosed everything, Miranda continued. The school board knows. The companies know. Your leverage is gone. You'll all go down with me, Christina threatened. No, we won't. Because unlike you, we're actually sorry. We've made amends. You? You're still trying to profit from it. Later that week, Christina stood outside the massive iron gates of her former home, pressing the intercom repeatedly. Herbert, we need to talk about the children. His voice came through, cool and professional. Any communication needs to go through my lawyers. Think of the children, she pleaded, voice breaking. They need their mother. They needed a mother 16 years ago. What they got was a sociopath who mocked their father and planned to steal their trust funds. Goodbye, Christina. The gates remained closed. Through them, she watched Amy and Lucas exit the house, heading to their father's waiting car. Neither looked in her direction. Inside his home office that evening, Herbert reviewed a different kind of document, Amy's college application essay. The title caught his attention. Integrity in the Face of Betrayal. Is it too personal? Amy asked from the doorway. Princeton's my dream school, but if you think it's too much. Herbert read the opening paragraph, pride swelling. His daughter had transformed their family crisis into a powerful meditation on ethics and resilience. It's perfect, he assured her. Raw, honest, and strong. Just like you. Lucas appeared behind his sister, tablet in hand. Dad, the TEDx organizers confirmed my slot. Surviving Family Betrayal, A Teenager's Guide to Moral Courage. Herbert studied his children. Amy's quiet strength, Lucas's analytical mind. They'd emerged from the crisis not as victims, but as advocates for integrity. Months later, Herbert stood at the podium accepting the CEO of the Year award. The audience included his children, Philip, and faces from every phase of his career. Success built on lies falls under its own weight. He began his speech. Success built on truth rises above all betrayal. I learned this lesson the hard way, but it was worth every moment. In the maximum security wing of a federal prison, James Delgado opened his mail to find photos of the ceremony. Herbert's success splashed across business magazines. The children's achievements highlighted in social pages. His empire, built on quicksand, had collapsed. Herbert's, built on bedrock, soared. James picked up a pen, beginning another letter begging forgiveness. Like the others, it would go unanswered. Christina folded clothes at her retail job, watching her former friends shop without acknowledging her. Through the store window, she could see Maxwell Industries Tower dominating the skyline. Somewhere up there, Herbert was thriving without her. Her manager approached. Stockroom needs organizing. That's your job now. She nodded, adding it to her list of menial tasks. Her divorce settlement had barely covered her legal fees. The prenup, ironically insisted upon by her own parents, had proven airtight. In a smaller but respectable firm across town, Candace completed her immunity-granted testimony. Her new job wasn't as prestigious as Maxwell Industries, but it came with something better: peace of mind. She sealed an envelope containing her annual thank-you note to Herbert. His mercy had given her a second chance, one she'd earned through honesty. Herbert's new corner office, 10 floors above his old one, offered a perfect view of his domain. Maxwell Industries had doubled in value under his leadership. New ethics policies made it a model of corporate governance. Philip had granted him equity partnership, making official what everyone already knew: Herbert Gregory represented the company's future. On his desk, next to family photos and industry awards, sat a simple frame. Inside, the security footage still, Christina sneering, "You're such a loser." Below it, his CEO of the Year award inscription: "To those who choose integrity over easy success." The same footage now opened every corporate ethics training session. New employees watched the scene unfold, learning that integrity wasn't just a buzzword at Maxwell Industries. It was the foundation of their success. Amy's acceptance letter from Princeton hung beside Lucas's viral TEDx talk statistics. His children had transformed trauma into triumph, their story inspiring others to choose truth over convenience. Herbert's phone buzzed. A message from Philip: "Dinner tonight? Might be time to discuss your chairman transition." He smiled, typing his response. The view from his office showed Manhattan spread before him, but his real achievement sat in that simple frame: proof that sometimes the best revenge is living well. And living well, he discovered, meant living true. In the end, Christina had been right about one thing: James was twice the man Herbert would ever be. Twice as corrupt, twice as weak, twice as deserving of his fall. Herbert Gregory had built his empire on steel and stone, not sand and schemes. Let the world call it a scandal. He called it justice. And justice, served from a corner office with a view, had never tasted sweeter. 5 years later, the price of betrayal. The fluorescent lights of Macy's Herald Square buzzed overhead as Christina Gregory, now Christina Martinez after her second failed marriage, folded another stack of designer clothes she once would have bought without a second thought. At 47, her carefully maintained appearance couldn't quite hide the bitterness etched around her mouth or the desperate gleam in her eyes. "Martinez." Customer complaint in fitting room 3, her 20-something supervisor called out, barely concealing her satisfaction at ordering around a woman who had once hosted galas in Manhattan penthouses. Christina hurried to the fitting room, only to freeze at the sight of Miranda Chen trying on a Versace dress. The board chairman's wife, still a fixture in the social circles Christina had been exiled from, didn't bother hiding her smirk. "Oh, how fitting," Miranda commented, adjusting the designer dress. "Could you fetch this in a size smaller? The holiday collection is divine this year." "Not that you'd know, working in the regular section." Christina swallowed her retort, remembering her last warning about being rude to customers. Her retail salary barely covered the rent on her Queens studio apartment. She couldn't afford another incident. "Right away, ma'am," she managed, ducking out to the stockroom. Through the store's windows, Maxwell Industries Tower dominated the skyline, a daily reminder of everything she'd lost. Her phone buzzed, another rejection from a headhunter. "Given your history with Maxwell Industries, we don't feel you'd be a good fit." They never said it directly, but her name had become toxic in corporate circles. The scandal had its own Wikipedia page now. Across town, in a maximum security federal prison, James Delgado stared at the latest newspaper article about Maxwell Industries' unprecedented growth. His prison-issued reading glasses couldn't quite focus on the smaller text, but Herbert Gregory's photo was sharp enough, accepting some international business award, looking even more distinguished with silver temples. "Still obsessing over your old company, Delgado?" his cellmate asked. "That's what, 15 years left on your sentence." 12 with good behavior, James corrected automatically, though they both knew white-collar criminals rarely served full terms. Still, the SEC had made an example of him. His pattern of corporate fraud, spanning decades and multiple companies, had become a cautionary tale taught in business schools. His last appeal had been denied 6 months ago. The evidence had been overwhelming. Christina's detailed records, Candace's testimony, the paper trail at Norton Corporation. His corporate allies had turned state's evidence, each racing to save themselves. His prison account held exactly $127.43. The government had seized everything else: houses, cars, investments. Even his designer suits had been auctioned off to pay restitution. The cheap prison uniform chafed both his skin and his ego. A guard appeared with mail call. Delgado, another return to sender. Gregory's office still won't accept your letters. James crumpled his latest attempt at apologizing. Or more accurately, attempting to manipulate his way back into some position of influence. Herbert's response never varied. All communication must go through lawyers. Meanwhile, in Princeton's prestigious Gothic halls, Amy Gregory's thesis on corporate ethics was creating waves. At 21, she'd already been featured in business journals, her unique perspective on corporate culture shaped by personal experience. Your case study on Maxwell Industries' transformation is exceptional, her advisor praised. The comparison between fear-based compliance and integrity-driven ethics is particularly insightful. Amy smiled, adjusting her laptop to show her latest research. I've been interviewing executives who lived through the transition. The cultural shift after my father implemented the new policies was apparently remarkable. Her phone lit up with a text from Lucas, now a freshman at Harvard. Guess who asked me to give another TED Talk? This time they want both of us. Surviving Betrayal. A Family's Journey to Truth. Lucas's first TEDx talk had gone viral, spawning a youth movement focused on moral courage and family resilience. At 19, he'd already published a book aimed at helping teenagers navigate family crises. The advance had gone to a foundation supporting children of families broken by corporate fraud. Their mothers' occasional attempts at contact, usually around holidays or their birthdays, went unanswered. Her social media stalking had revealed her children's successes, but she remained blocked from directly reaching them. Her last Christmas card had been returned unopened, her tearful voicemail deleted unheard. Across the city, Candace Wilson, N.E. Matthews, reviewed quarterly reports in her new office. The smaller firm she joined after her immunity deal had promoted her to chief of staff, appreciating both her experience and her hard-learned lessons about integrity. She sealed her annual thank you note to Herbert, 5 years of gratitude for the mercy that had given her a second chance. Her testimony had helped build the federal case against James and Christina, while her documented blackmail experience had shaped Maxwell Industries' new whistleblower protection policies. Her brother, whose addiction James had threatened to expose, now ran a successful recovery program. Herbert's quiet assistance with treatment costs had saved not just her career, but her family. In Maxwell Industries' executive floor, now 20 stories higher than his original office, Herbert Gregory reviewed the latest expansion plans. At 50, he'd fully grown into his power, his reputation for ethical leadership making him one of Wall Street's most respected figures. Philip Summers, though officially retired, still kept an office down the hall. Their mentor-proc relationship had evolved into a deep friendship, their shared vision of corporate integrity reshaping industry standards. The Harvard Business Review wants to do another piece, Herbert's assistant mentioned. They're calling Maxwell's transformation a template for ethical corporate reform. Herbert nodded, glancing at the framed security footage still on his wall. Christina's sneer forever captured in mid-insult. The frame's inscription had become the company's unofficial motto. Success built on lies falls under its own weight. Success built on truth rises above all betrayal. The scandal had sparked a revolution in corporate governance. Maxwell's ethics training program, built around the security footage and subsequent investigation, was now licensed to corporations worldwide. Business schools used the case study to teach crisis management and ethical leadership. Herbert's phone buzzed, a message from Amy. Dad, Lucas and I want to contribute a chapter to your book. Our perspective on how ethical leadership starts at home. His children had emerged from the crisis stronger, their understanding of integrity shaped by watching him choose truth over convenience, justice over revenge. Their success, Amy's academic achievements, Lucas's advocacy work, meant more than any corporate victory. A calendar alert reminded him of tomorrow's board meeting. Maxwell's value had tripled under his leadership, but more importantly, its culture had been transformed. The fear-based hierarchy James had built had been replaced by transparent processes and clear accountability. Christina's last desperate attempt at contact had come 6 months ago, a tear-stained letter begging for help finding a better job. Her third engagement had fallen through when the wealthy widower's family had Googled her name. Her retail position remained her only option, her reputation permanently stained by her own choices. James's prison writings, smuggled out and posted online by a sympathetic guard, revealed a man still attempting to justify his actions. His claims of being misunderstood and unfairly persecuted only reinforced the justice of his downfall. The private school mothers who'd once followed Christina's lead had rebuilt their lives through honesty. Miranda Chun now led ethics seminars for corporate spouses, turning her experience into a cautionary tale about moral compromise. Herbert's new wife, a brilliant federal prosecutor he'd met during the SEC investigation, shared his commitment to integrity. Their relationship, built on mutual respect and shared values, stood in sharp contrast to his sham of a first marriage. The annual Maxwell Industries Charity Gala, once Christina's social playground, now focused on supporting whistleblower protection and corporate ethics initiatives. The guest list notably excluded anyone involved in the scandal, their absence a reminder that social consequences outlasted legal ones. Looking out over Manhattan's skyline, Herbert reflected on the 5 years since the scandal. His empire had risen from the ashes of betrayal, stronger for having been tested. The price of truth had been high, but the rewards proved immeasurable. In Queens, Christina finished her shift, walking past Maxwell's illuminated tower on her way to the subway. In prison, James stared at his ceiling, counting days until a parole hearing that would likely deny him again. Their betrayal had cost them everything: wealth, status, family, freedom. But in his corner office, Herbert Gregory smiled at his children's latest achievements, his company's continued growth, his life's complete vindication. The security footage still played at every new employee orientation. Christina's words now a punchline: "You're such a loser." Time had revealed the true losers in this game of corporate chess. Success built on lies had indeed fallen under its own weight. Success built on truth had risen above all betrayal. And in Manhattan's glittering canyons of power, that truth still echoed. Integrity, once proven, outweighed all the schemes of lesser players. The price of betrayal proved steeper than any of them had imagined. The rewards of integrity proved greater than anyone had dreamed. And Herbert Gregory, once mocked as a loser, had won the only game that truly mattered, the one played for keeps.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.